Okay. I think I see most of the folks I was expecting. Yes, okay. So welcome to the NTP Working Group, our April interim. I'm going to put we will be taking notes on the I apparently can't do two things at once. There we go. That should be the notes page. Please add your the agendas at the top and then put the notes down below the line as indicated. Dieter will be taking notes, but if anybody can add stuff in, that would be helpful as well. And be sure to add yourself to the attendees list. Although I guess technically now MeetEcho captures that, but I'd like you to go ahead and do that. As a reminder, this is an official IETF working group, and the note well that applies to all of our processes and procedures also applies to this meeting. If you have any questions about the note well, please feel free to ask Dieter or myself or Eric Klein, our AD. A couple of additional reminders. I put the link. Of course, you all can't actually click on that, so it's not terribly helpful, but we will be doing draft minutes in the online notes tool. Please help contribute to ensure accuracy and completeness. Please do use the Q tool. Be clear, concise, and respectful, and act according to our IETF Code of Conduct. This is the draft agenda for today. I made a tiny edit. I added a 1588 update, be very informal in there. But other than that, does anybody else have any agenda bashing? No? Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I wanted to go over was our current working group status review and update. I did want to mention, I didn't actually add it as an agenda item here, but the registries document is now an RFC. It is RFC 9748, and we are working on getting the designated experts in place for that. Eric Klein and I discussed it at the IETF 122, and then we both took vacations immediately afterwards, so we have not finished that yet. The interleave modes and the enterprise profile are both in Auth 48, so we should see those coming out within the next, probably next few weeks or a month or so. Those will both be done. And NTP over PTP is about ready to head to the IESG. It's done with the working group and on to the next step. With that, the next item on the agenda is the NTP v5 requirements and protocol specification. The first thing before I ask about document updates is we currently have a requirements document and we have a separate protocol specification. The requirements document has stalled a little bit, and there has been some resistance to actually publishing it as an RFC. Tal Mizrahi has agreed to work on what the best way forward with that is. As a side note, I don't know if anybody has James's contact information. His email is bouncing, and so Dieter and I have been unable to get in touch with him. So if anybody has contact information for James, that would be really helpful. And with that, Tal, do you want to talk about plans for the requirements document and moving it forward? Or not?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. So basically, I reviewed the document, and my impression was that it's first of all, it's in pretty good shape of readability in terms of its quality, but it's not necessarily on the current NTP 5 spec. So the alternatives we talked about, either to slightly update it in a way that it will be consistent and to allow it to be in a sufficient quality to be published as an RFC, or the other option is to just leave it as is and make sure that all the relevant content is included in the NTP v5 spec. And actually, the second option can be done regardless of whether we decide to do the first one or not. So these are basically the two options we've been thinking about, and it's kind of an open question at this point, I think. But either way, I'm happy to do the work and to do another review to make sure that we have a full convergence in terms of either publication or merging the necessary content into the spec.
Okay. I think we need to put at least a little bit of the content into the spec, because one piece of feedback I've gotten from Eric on a couple of our documents is that we need the rationale or the motivation for why we're doing it, because that is sometimes not clear and people are asking questions about that. So I think we need to at least think about that along those lines. Miroslav, did you have any comments on what you would like to see with the requirements information?
I have no preference. I think it can be
Okay.
published as a new document or merged. My concern is that we don't duplicate the content. Like, say at one place that we must do something, and then another place we do that. So I don't know.
Okay. I do think you're right about being careful about duplicating content. I think for a while there we were, it seemed like we were holding up the protocol specification because of the requirements, but I think we've had adequate discussion on the requirements at this stage. Ira, I see a question in the chat about other status and informational being considered. Do you mean for the requirements document?
Yes.
It would be an informational document if we were to publish it as a standalone document, similar to the one we did for time security.
My pain point, which I commented last year, is it's full of musts and shoulds, and that is really ambiguous in an informational document. Experimental, maybe, but informational, very unusual.
Right. Some of the initial feedback we had gotten on the requirements document was that we needed to take the normative language out of it because it's not a protocol specification and it cannot have normative language in it. And we got the document moved over to our GitHub repo for all of the rest of the NTP working groups, but we have not been able to get it updated, which is why we asked Tal to step in. So I think that is the one major. And Dieter, if you can refresh my memory to make sure I've got this exactly right, that was sort of the one big remaining issue with this document, right?
Yes, that was one of the remaining. Yes, this is the main remaining issue. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So Ira, your comment has not been dropped. It's kind of hit an editing roadblock. So Any other questions or comments on the way forward for the requirements information? Nope. All right. There has been an update, recent update to the protocol specification, and there's been additional work on the mailing list. Miroslav, do you want to speak to the status of the V5 spec?
Yes, there were quite a few changes made in the document. The security considerations has been rewritten by Tal, and he submitted quite a few other changes and improvements. So I think this is nicely improving, and we have planned some other work, mainly to improve the introduction and provide a background, and as you suggested.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Are there any comments or any questions on the work, NTP V5 work? Okay. We are hoping to do, in conjunction with IETF 123, we are hoping to do a hackathon. We would like to have some NTP V5 implementations. So if you're at all aware of anybody working on that, that would be helpful. Next item on the agenda is rough time. So we did do a working group last call for rough time. Just prior to that working group last call, that document was moved from standards track to experimental. We've gotten some feedback on the working group last call is Marcus. Yeah, Marcus, do you want to speak to the comments that have been received? And
yeah, I guess I'll say something. So most of the comments were basically just, saying people had no issues with the draft. The most sort of serious thing brought up was what Miroslav thankfully found for us. There was this potential for a DOS attack, since there was no way to sort of uniquely identify whether a message is a request or a response. And in fact, prior to the last draft, this was an actual vulnerability. It would sort of work out of the box, and we sort of fixed it without knowing in the last draft. That said, we will probably need to do a small update to the protocol to fix that. And then both Hal, Miroslav, and also Offlist today, I've gotten some good suggestions for updating the language and things that are missing or ambiguous. So we'll try and address those very soon.
okay. I sent a short chat message to Dieter before this call. We've gotten a little bit better response now. I would still like a couple more people to comment. So my thought is I'm going to extend the working group last call through Friday.
Yes, I will support that.
Okay, great, thank you. I mean, I realize we're a small working group, but we do need to be able to demonstrate working group consensus before sending this forward. So we'll extend it a little bit longer and encourage some more people to respond. Um, all right. I put NTS for PTP. Anything else on rough time? No, great. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would also support rough time
Okay.
going forward as experimental.
Great, thank you. So I put NTS for PTP here, and then I put the IEEE 1588 update a little bit later, at which I think what I'm going to do is move the IEEE 1588 update up and do it now, because it leads into where the NTS for PTP work is. And then I'll hand it over to Martin to talk about NTS for PTP, if that's okay. There's two things I wanted to mention to this group about the 1588. The first one is the CSPTP, the client server PTP 1588.1 group has settled on a basic approach for going forward. And this is the sync request, sync response proposal that was led by Meinberg and a number of other folks. So we have a basic approach for that going forward, which will be helpful. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is the security subcommittee has two basic approaches on the table right now, or not, I guess not necessarily two basic approaches. There's been a number of approaches discussed about how to address some of the security vulnerabilities. There's sort of two sets of work going on. One is to address the security vulnerabilities that were identified by David Van Hook and sent over to 1588. And then the second one is how do we make NTS work for PTP? So we're hoping that in the next month or month and a half, we'll have a solid direction on that. If you're interested in any of these activities, because they do impact and cross over between what we're doing and what they're doing, please feel free to ask any questions. Does anybody have any questions on 1588? And conveniently, Doug is here too, so. Yeah. All right, so with that, Martin, do you want to talk about the status of the status of the NTS for PTP document?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so the document hasn't changed very much. So basically, I'm focusing on the implementation on NTS for PTP, and I'm taking some notes. So I see some smaller issues and typos. The rest looks pretty fine up to now. I'm hoping that I can run the first test in July. This is the current plan. So the biggest updates which must be made in the document is, of course, the discussion about how to put the security information in the PTP packets. But this is not a big deal to put it in the document if we have a decision. So currently I'm focusing on the implementation, and I guess I can give the next update in August, so in a few months.
Okay. When you said the next update in August, do you mean you're not planning to do an update prior to the July meeting, right?
Maybe I could give a small update, but it is also because I'm write the document with Rainer, and this is also a question of who has time. So in August there's a regular point because we want update before the draft expires, of course. If we have smaller updates, maybe after the hackathon, if everything goes well, then we can make a smaller update. Depends on the outcome.
Okay. All right, so we are making some progress there. David, did you want to speak at all about the security work in 1588, or are you?
Yeah, well, there is, don't think there's much to say.
Okay.
We're making progress, I think. We need to look at options, but we're doing that.
Okay. And I also went ahead and left the NTS for NTP pools on the agenda. You may not have any sort of update, but I thought I would go ahead and ask.
I currently don't have an update for that. Sorry. We were hoping to have it at this time, but it'll be another month or so, hopefully.
Okay, good. Next on the agenda is the IETF 123 hackathon plans. I would definitely like to see an NTP v5 activity in Madrid. I'm hoping for an NTS over PTP activity as well. I don't know if there's any need for any sort of rough time work, or do you, Marcus, do you think you all are? It's not that hard to include it, but.
I'm sorry, Karen, I missed the question there.
Oh, my question was, is there any need for any sort of hackathon activity related to rough time in July?
No, probably not. I think
Okay.
we got most of it done in Dublin.
All right. The next thing on the agenda is the ITU leap second decision. Christoph, you were going to speak to that? Christoph.
Okay. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
I don't really know how to speak to that. Like, what's...
Oh, sorry. I guess I should have given you a tiny bit of context. So IEEE 1588 is writing a letter to the IPM with the impact of changes in leap seconds to that standards work. And the question was whether NTP should also do something like that. And I know that you've been following the activity. I thought Dieter said he had spoken to you, so I thought you knew what we were asking about.
We've spoken briefly on my car ride home an hour ago. Yeah, no, I'm not like sure the extent of the context that I should present to the group. Basically,
I would like a tiny bit of background on what's going on and whether it is useful for NTP, for the NTP working group or the IETF in general to speak up or not.
Okay, I suppose that it is analog to the work in 1588, which was not very extensive. Basically, we had one meeting discussing some text. And the rough context is that there is a big decision about abolishing leap seconds and or increasing the tolerance for how far UTC can deviate from solar time in Greenwich to a larger amount than a second. It's really unclear what the solution is or the proposed solution even is going to be. It might be that it's like 10 seconds, 100 seconds, an hour, or that the whole concept is completely dropped and the offset can be arbitrarily large. This is at the time not clear, and that's just exactly, I think, what the 1588 group is speaking to in the text, where I think what we settled on was basically a comment saying we can communicate a leap second, but with the current protocol version as it is, we couldn't communicate an offset larger than 1 second that should be compensated for, like, at the next opportunity, or something like that. that's not really advice to the ITU, but it's input. And perhaps there's a similar statement that we could write as the NTP working group, like what makes sense, or if we can confirm that this makes for a lot of trouble, the whole leap second practice, which I think we can, that makes sense, or that it definitely has downsides. And then also we could give a recommendation on what would be sensible and what wouldn't, analog to what was done in 1588. Maybe Doug, you want to speak up to that as well, where basically the recommendation is a very soft, hey, we would advise against making it 10 seconds, and then that needs to be communicated and executed like a leap second currently has to be.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so we sent this liaison statement to BIPM at the request of Patricia Tavello, who's the director of the timing department, in which she wanted to say what are the consequences for critical infrastructure that's dependent on PTP if there was some kind of changes to how UTC is adjusted to stay near UT1. So that's what we spoke to, and it seems like there's some proposals that would be a real problem. I don't know if they have much backing, but things like, fractional second corrections happening, or some continuous smearing or something like that would really be a bad idea. I think those people haven't really looked into it too closely. So I think it would make sense for this working group, I think, to say what are the bounds on what you could change that would be problematic for all the critical infrastructure that relies on NTP timing right now.
There is one thing that I forgot that maybe we could do too. I would say one of the major points why this is being discussed now and being treated as kind of urgent is the fear of there being a negative leap second for the first time since the practice was established. And I think it's just a big point of discussion in the whole thing in the ITU, and also with the actual people who would have to change the definition of UTC, which I think is CGPM. Is that there is this looming danger of there might be for the first time a negative leap second, and there is a fear of it being like a Y2K bug or something of that magnitude. Perhaps maybe that's also a statement. That's also a point that this group can speak to, how bad we see the risk of having to execute a negative leap second for the first time on a large scale, because it's definitely one of the major reasons why this is being pursued.
Okay. When you say this is a major reason it's being pursued, what's the time frame? I mean, I heard something about July at one point.
The time frame is pretty relaxed and also unclear. There is mention of the year 2035, but that's neither at the latest nor at the earliest. I don't know what it is really, and I think that's actually related to the negative leap second thing. If there is should there be a negative leap second coming up before 2035, it would be treated as more urgent, and it would definitely be an option to try to abolish the whole practice or increase the tolerance before 2035. If it's not coming up, then people would probably like to prolong the waiting, because there is serious discussions. There's at least one nation remaining who doesn't want to do it, and it was still a blocking issue. And I think the whole language is still not completely committed. It doesn't really say we're going to do it. it says something to the effect of we're going to strongly consider doing it by the year 2035 or something to that effect. So yeah, the time frame is weird and unclear most of all, but it seems to be something like years, except if a negative leap second is coming up earlier, then it could be very quick.
Yeah. Doug?
Yeah, so I heard the July date from Patrizia. I think that I don't know if it was a meeting at BIPM or what was in preparation for going to the ITUR, but that's when she told me she wanted to hear, she was hoping for some kind of statement from 1588 by that.
Yeah. Patrizia is currently tasked with, among other things, I think, like both establishing the risk of there being a negative leap second, and also how catastrophic it would be if that happened, but also with finding out what the way forward should be. Like, should it be increasing to 10 seconds? Should it be increasing to 100 seconds? And I believe, I haven't spoken to her about it, but I would bet that this is what she's looking for input for. The question of what should be done instead of this limit of 0.9 seconds or whatever it is right now, where effectively you prevent an offset of more than 1 second. I think that's what she wants input for. But like, ask her if you want to know for sure.
Dave?
For NTP.org, NTPD, fractional leap seconds would also be an implementation problem for the currently deployed code. Multiple leap seconds would definitely not work without new code and new testing. Negative leap seconds should work. There's no indication that the code that's there would not handle a negative leap second correctly. But it will accept a leap second scheduled for the end of December or the end of June. So if you had multiple leap seconds you wanted to insert in short order, you couldn't do it, for example, over a couple of days, 1 second per day. You could only do 2 seconds per year with the currently deployed code.
Doug?
Yeah, so at the ISPCS Plug Fest, we test negative leap seconds with GNSS simulators that can do that. And the first time we did it, like, nobody passed. And it was traced back to a bug in Linux that thought that leap seconds were always positive. And then over time, most people are passing that test now. But it was an indication to me that there's probably a lot of stuff out there that is not going to do well if you send a negative leap second in it.
All right. So my thought on this and my reason for bringing it up was, in my interpretation of the email that I got was that the IPM was interested in hearing from groups that would be potentially impacted by any decision here, and I felt that that NTP is a protocol that would, deployments of NTP would be impacted by this. It's not completely clear to me how we would make the statement for the IETF. I've talked to Eric a little bit about it, and I've watched the 1588 statement be developed. I'm curious. I'm not eager to push this forward if we don't think it's worth doing. So I'm curious for opinions on whether or not it's worth the IETF trying to at least say, hey, we're here and this is a topic of concern to us. Christoph?
Yeah, I will say that I think the the phantom of how bad it would, how bad a negative leap second would be for NTP is a major point in the discussion. So maybe there is just value in clearing up what we actually think, how big the problem or how serious the problem would be.
Yeah, I think the network operators probably may not be aware of this, and it would make sense for the NTP working group to speak on their behalf, because we are aware and can warn regulators what it would mean, or what it could mean for critical infrastructure that uses NTP.
Any other thoughts or comments? I will admit I'm struggling a little bit with how, I mean, I guess I did ask the question about how urgent this is, but in dating myself a little bit, in the mid-1990s, I wrote a white paper about the impact of changing leap seconds when the ITUR was talking about changing leap seconds, and 30 years have passed and they still have not changed the way they do leap seconds. So I can, I guess if anybody is interested in maybe taking a look at what 1588 did, we can look at it a little bit further and decide in the next month or so whether we want to try and push something forward. Oh, I see Dennis says in the chat that it's worth making a statement that is specific to NTP. Well, that was specifically, I think it would be easier for us to make a statement about what is specific to NTP and what are the impacts for NTP, as opposed to what we think the right solution is for them. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I agree with Dennis. I think we should probably restrict our comments to saying this is the impact on NTP, infrastructure that uses NTP. Maybe if someone wrote something down that, like, the liaison statement could look like this, it might be easier for some members of this group to think about, do we want to do this, and is that the right thing to say?
Okay. That sounds good. Any other comments or questions on this topic or any of the previous topics? Okay. Let's see. So we're at the middle of April now. Dieter and I will work to schedule another virtual interim end of May, early June. If you have any major times that you can't, that you think would be bad, please send us an email. We have received a comment about the scheduling time of this meeting. So we will probably do a doodle poll to give people the opportunity to speak up on what the options are, and what they're willing to attend. So we'll do a doodle poll in advance of the next meeting, and we'll have a meeting end of May, early June. And then we will also go ahead and start planning for an NTP meeting at the IETF meeting in July. For your planning purposes, if you're not paying attention, the hackathon would be July 19th and 20th. And then for the people that would be there physically, it's in Madrid. And then the IETF itself is the 21st through the 25th. We will because we're trying to do a hackathon, we will request to have the NTP meeting earlier in the week to make it more efficient for those. And I see Ira has indicated the first week of June is bad. All right, anything else? All right. Thank you all, and I look forward to continuing document updates. And you have the rest of the 45 minutes back, or 15 minutes back. So, all right. With that, the meeting's adjourned.